see the green light yet. I don't know if we're live yet. And then I don't see the green screen. But I guess we should. Good evening and what up, Del Detroit? You are watching In Session on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Please like, share, follow, subscribe, and like. And we will have our lines open in about 15 minutes, so about 5:15. You can call in at 313-355-6018. And I am your host, Dr. T.
And I'm your other host, Dr. Fista.
And today we are going to be having a very serious conversation talking about human trafficking. We have two very special guests. We have State Representative Tyrone Carter, right here in our very own state of Michigan, who's on the phone line with us. Rep, you want to say
Thank
hello?
you so much. Yeah, I just want to say, good happy afternoon to everybody, and glad to be a part of this discussion today.
Absolutely. And we also have Ivy Neal, who has, I'm going to call her our expert in human trafficking. So we have her with us today. And we're really going to be talking about human trafficking and the internet and how traffickers actually use the internet to lure in people into human trafficking. So, but before we do that, I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves and tell them a little bit, tell you all a little bit about them. Let's start with Representative Carter.
Well, as a gentleman, I defer to have ladies go if Miss Ivy, but I know we're short on time. I'm in my second term representing the District 6, which is Ecourt, River Rouge, and everything downtown up to and including Belle Isle and Indian Village. And prior to that, I was the president of my neighborhood organization. And as of May 1st, I've been retired from the Sheriff's Department, where I retired as a lieutenant in 2008. So everything that I've done in my life has really been around service.
Right.
Living the neighborhood I grew up in, so I get to represent the people that I love.
So you got a chance to represent the people that you love. And some people may not even know that you actually graduated from the FBI National Academy and the Michigan Political Leadership Program. How was your experience with being involved with the FBI National Academy?
Oh yeah, that was a wonderful time. Went away for 10 weeks, and I stayed at Quantico, Virginia, the FBI headquarters, and just an awesome experience where you get to meet law enforcement officials from literally all around the world and exchange ideas. And, if I were fortunate enough to go again, and whatever the hot issues are, like right now, if human trafficking is, we catch things later. So I would talk to somebody, because one of the men came from Uzbekistan. One was from Brazil. So I'd ask them, is that an issue down there, and how do you guys address it or attack it? So fortunate to go there, and has used that experience and those relationships to the advantage and to the best of my knowledge to help people in the district and in the city.
Okay. And you've worked with Ivy before doing some human trafficking. So, Ivy, tell our audience a little bit about you and how you got involved in this whole human trafficking arena.
Okay, well, first off, thank you for having me. How I actually initially
Well, tell us
got
about you
involved.
first. Tell us about you.
About me?
Yeah.
Okay, I am Ivy Nicole. I am a associate level social worker. I've worked in mental health for about 6 years now, and most of my work has been around the at-risk population. I've been a counselor for at-risk girls in residential settings, where most of them were human trafficked.
And you also do a girl chat.
Yes, I do. I am the founder of Let's Have Girls Talk mentoring program that was founded in 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Actually on paper in 2017, but it actually started because I was an intern for our all girls home, and it was just something that I kind of constructed during that time there. You know, they was not with the traditional groups, so I called it Girl Talk. I said, hey everyone, let's have Girl Talk.
Okay.
And they thought it was really cool. They thought it was cute. They thought it was fun.
And not group and therapeutic, right?
Exactly. You know, we would go to the park, we would take walks, and we would chat, you know, because it was my job as a professional to be able to translate whatever they were saying. I just needed them to be able to have a safe space and have someone safe that they can actually relate to.
Right. And you've also have organized some human trafficking rallies right here in the city of Detroit, right?
I have. I've organized a few, mostly at Church of the Messiah with Pastor Barry Randolph.
You did one at Joseph A. Walker's.
I did one at Joseph
Walker's. That was your first one, right?
That was my first one. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was just like, okay, we're going to get out there. No one showed up with you guys. But...
and unfortunately, that's the case when we're talking about human trafficking. We really don't see a lot of involvement from the general public. Oftentimes, they don't even know what human trafficking is.
Correct,
you know?
And that's the main issue, because one of my questions that I want to explore with Rep. Carter and Ivy here is, how can one know or tell that there is a problem, either be in neighborhood, in friends, family, and so forth? And you know, Ivy, you being involved in mental health as well, obviously there's a major impact not only to the individual themselves who's being human trafficked, but to the community at large. So what do you know as far as people's knowledge related to human trafficking in general?
Well,
you want to take that one, Ivy? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that. For me, I've been on a couple sides of the spectrum, meaning that I am a survivor of exploitation. I'm a former anxiety dancer before I even became a social worker, so that was kind of it kind of led me in that direction.
So as someone that was involved in the adult entertainment field, how is that seen on that side? How are ladies trapped into that lifestyle of trafficking, human trafficking for sex exploitation?
So the thing about it is, when I was dancing, it was a lot of women there, some younger, some older than me. Some of them that were older than me, that was all they did. That was all they knew. They came from a history of abuse. They freely talked about their sex life when they was a kid, which we know that's not, you know, a normal factor.
Right, as a child.
Right? But this was their life, and this was all that they knew. So when I became a social worker, I had a different outlook and a different perspective, looking at the at-risk population and what it was that they needed, how they felt, what really went on in the back rooms. To be able to say, hey, this is an issue, this is...
So what goes on in the back rooms? I mean, we already always hear there's no sex in the champagne room, and sex acts are not performed in nightclubs. However, when you talk to someone that's in that industry, you'll hear a different story. So what's the real story when we're looking at people who work in nightclubs and that sex industry?
If you tip the DJ enough, he ain't seen nothing or heard nothing.
And what about security?
You tip security enough, because initially you have to get past the DJ to get to the back room. Because you're going to tell him what songs you want played. Whoever you're dancing for is going to tip him a little more. Ain't nobody seen or heard anything. As long as you have that tip up by the end of the night.
And Rep. Carter.
Go ahead, then I'll let you go first, Dr. T. I had a different question for Rep. Carter.
Rep. Carter, what are you seeing in the community in your district are people more aware of human trafficking, what that looks like, or are you finding that you need to bring more awareness within your own district?
No, people really don't get it until it impacts them directly or personally.
Right.
They see it as, just like Ivy just said. Once upon a time, I actually ran our morality unit at the sheriff's department, and we would actually raid some of these places. And you would know that many of these young people, young women, were being exploited, whether it was drugs. It was not a normal situation. So you try to get them some help. And I know that we flipped the script at the county jail started because of the recidivism of, women on the streets, women caught up in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you stop that? Well, you have to get them away from their abusers or the person that is exploiting them.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times they were afraid to.
Right.
So again, it's one of those situations where people think it's a victimless crime a lot too. When you hear about women out doing certain things, but there's a lot of exploitation going on,
Mm-hmm.
and until it directly impacts you, a lot of people are like, oh, that's just them. That's just how it happens. But until it happens to you or somebody that you care about, that's when it really becomes real for a lot of people.
Yeah, Rep Carter, you being one of our legislators, this whole internet world has changed the way we do things. And while it has brought lots of benefits, it also brings challenges. And one of them is the possibility of this human trafficking being worked through internet and such. And I know state of Michigan, in the years you're there, has been doing lots of work on human trafficking. What can you tell us? Anything you can tell us in that area direction?
Yes, there has been some task force put together, and it's one of those things. I know last term we're 5 months into this term. We've been working on the budget, but we're into this term, and as we get past the budget, as issues come up, then we'll address them. And I know that there's been a human trafficking task force that some of the returning members were on, and I can get that information. And what we do is share it, amongst our colleagues and even our communities. We can put it in newsletters.
Right.
If Ivy's having a rally or a walk, if she gives me enough time, I can let other people know. And the thing about this issue is a lot of people suffer in silence, and they don't know that other people are going through what they're going through. So if we're able to push it out and have those conversations, I think that it removes a lot of the fear and the stigma attached to it.
Absolutely.
So
Ladies,
I think she's doing a great job with what she's doing. Just we need to get the word out, more, so that people will understand that it's not just me.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching In Session on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Yes.
Please like, share, follow, subscribe, and you can join the conversation by dialing 313-355-6018. Our phone lines are open now. We have with our state representative Tyrone Carter, as well as Ivy Neal. And I think we have a PSA too, don't we, about the COVID?
I do believe we do. It's in
Pay
front
some
of me.
bills.
Yes.
You have to pay some bills here.
As we battle the COVID-19 pandemic, it's clear that misinformation can be just as deadly as the awful virus and spread just as quickly. Myths are spreading on the internet and social media, so it's important to know the facts to keep our community healthy. The vaccines offered through Wayne County Public Health are scientifically proven to be safe. It is important that each one of us get the vaccine scheduled as soon as one is able to. To do so, visit waynecounty.com/COVID-19 to get the latest information.
Absolutely. Now I want to get more into our actual topic about the internet and human trafficking. So, and I really want to do this show because I have a friend that has a 14-year-old daughter, and just recently, his 14-year-old daughter got paid without his permission to on some podcast show. Now she's 14 years old. She looks a little bit older than I do. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. she she looks like a grown
wait,
woman.
what?
Yep.
She looks like a grown woman.
So she
but
probably
you
look
can
older than
tell-
me.
Right. She looks about your age.
Okay.
But in the face, you can tell she's still young. But she's on this internet podcast show that her parents didn't know anything about her being on this show. And then she proceeds to get a check for that. Would this be something that a parent should be leery of or afraid of? Because I know with working with human trafficking that this can be a first step
Correct.
Yeah.
to getting someone in that lifestyle.
That's what I was gonna say. That's step one, because that's part of the grooming.
Right.
That's the part where, you know, I gain your trust and I make it appear innocent until you get comfortable enough to where you're not gonna go anywhere else. You're not gonna tell anyone what happened.
Right.
And then that's when you ultimately get into that compromising position, rather.
Right. And then even a trafficker will tell you, well, I paid you, so now you have to do this. Oh, did you think that money was just to do a podcast? So we have to make our young people aware, especially in today's world with so much social media. We have Facebook, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, Snapchat, Backpage, front door, back door. I mean, we have all these.
Well, the thing is, by the time we as parents and even in law enforcement catch up, they switched on.
Exactly.
They moved on. Because even my son told me, I said, did you see this on Facebook? He goes, man, that's for old people.
Right.
Oh, man.
Right.
Did you see this? I mean, and it goes back to, like I said, law enforcement. By the time we figure out that it's an issue, they've moved on to another thing. It's almost like they're one step ahead of, parents and law enforcement. Because you look at some of these apps, and you need a crypto decoder to get into some of your children's phones.
Exactly.
So, you almost have to pay a server or service to say, okay, what is the latest and what should I look out for?
Right.
Wow. So basically, Rep. Carter, you're saying hire professionals, which probably only agencies like Sheriff's Department can afford, and not a household, obviously. And it's just so frightening to see that you're talking about a 14-year-old doing transactions through online means, right?
Right.
Basically, she's providing some form of service and someone is paying her. And either they never checked her age, or if they did, obviously they didn't care without any kind of consent or anything. As Ivy said, this
Well,
is
they try not, Doctor, they try not to check, because
Correct.
then they would have to do something or admit. So ignorance is bliss in their eyes.
Yep.
I don't want to know.
Exactly.
Yep, because it takes that intent, that part of knowledge there. Now, Rep. Carter, is there any rules about this? Do we even know? I mean, I feel like one of those old people on Facebook, right? But are there rules around such action? Do we even know?
Like laws, are there any laws as far as protecting people from human trafficking? Is that what you're
No,
talking
I'm
about?
talking about this instance, right, where you start to engage a 14-year-old in some form of transaction, podcast, some activity through internet, and then you reimburse them for their service, whatever that is, which is risky because could be the first step to something more.
Right.
Right. First, you have to prove intent. I mean, there's so many things that go into this. So I know that, years ago when I was at the Sheriff's Department, that they had an internet crime unit to, address these issues. But by the time the parents figure out, that these are issues, the person on the other end has gained that confidence.
And that trust.
They've got that relationship and that trust. Right. So I'm sure that Ivy could really talk to this with the young girls. And, I have a program for young boys. So I know about, swiping and criminal activity, but they're not being exploited to the degree that young women are.
Correct.
Yeah, but we also do know that young boys are trafficked.
Yep.
So it's not isolated to just girls.
But
or
young boys
women.
don't really talk about it.
Exactly.
They really don't. They really don't.
Yeah. And I really think, and I'm not a male, so I'm going to let you and Dr. Fish to speak to the male perspective. If you, for a young male that has been trafficked sexually, because we know that there's different forms of trafficking. We have labor, we have for organs and various different things. I think there's like 117 different types of human trafficking out there. So, as a young male being exploited sexually, how does that affect one's self esteem and their confidence?
Rep Carter, you want me to go or you want to go?
Well, I'll just say this, and I'll have you go. I've had some young men in my programs who were exploited, and they protected their siblings.
Yep.
And it took their trust for them to even talk about it because they were traumatized.
Right.
And that goes on. And you know the old saying that hurt people hurt people?
Yes.
Then you would have them going out doing criminal activity or doing something or not caring, if you will. So, I mean, there's a lot of layers to it, but trying to get somebody to really talk about it, because that is embarrassing.
Yep.
Even when, and that's when it's male to male.
Right.
Even when it's female to male. When you hear about the female teachers exploiting young men, even they're reluctant to talk.
Yep.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the actual internet and how traffickers recruit young people. And I'm not even going to just say young people, because it doesn't have to be anyone of a specific age, because we know trafficking is not just for the young people, but also for older women. I mean,
Right.
I know in my work, the oldest person that we found was a 72-year-old woman, and that was involved. Granted, she wasn't 72 when she started, but by the time we found her, she was 72 years old. And this was the
Wow.
woman that would train and basically groom the younger girls who would come in.
So she was the bottom.
So
Yes.
she was a recruiter, basically.
Well, no,
Yeah.
she didn't go out and do the recruiting. Once the girls came to the home, she was responsible for getting them prepared.
Wow.
So
Okay.
she was the bottom.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit how what does that look like when somebody is trying to recruit someone into this lifestyle?
Okay, so because we are talking the internet,
The internet
right?
specifically.
Okay, so what I've seen, with the girls that I mentor, they follow me on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I follow them back
Okay.
because I'm their mentor. I want to see what you're doing,
Mhm.
right? So when you go onto Instagram and you look into their stories, they're doing all of these dance challenges. They want to be the next Instagram influencer.
Right.
They got the Cardi B in the background. They're dancing to that. They're twerking. They're having the
Or
twerk
to Megan Thee
contest.
Stallion.
Yeah, they're doing all of these things, and then they're just like, oh my God, I got so many views, so many people looked at my story or whatever, right? So when you're talking about the grooming or whatever, you may have, let's hypothetically say, okay, we're going to use the 14-year-old, right? She's 14 years old. She has a friend in her class. They're doing their little Instagram challenges, their TikTok challenges or whatever together. Her friend in her class may have an older sister, 18, 19 years old, right? So initially she thinks it's cool to start hanging out with someone a little older than her. She get introduced maybe to the cousin that's a little older. So as a 14-year-old, you're like, oh yeah, I'm on Instagram. My boyfriend is 19. You think you're cool because you're in high school and your boyfriend is not. So it's that grooming period where.
So they'll use a intimate relationship to kind of lure in, like, okay, we're dating and you're my girlfriend or boyfriend.
Yeah.
And they build this relationship. They build up that trust. They get the person to tell them things about themselves. And even if they're having problems with their parents, because that is a real big trigger for
Absolutely.
yes.
You know, that home life,
Mhm.
you know, when you gain their confidence, they will give you what we call the keys to success.
Absolutely.
And a good listener is also an opportunist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because that's that bottom. That's the one that's going to groom you. That's the one that's going to teach you how to be sexy. They're going to do your hair. They're going to teach you how to do your makeup. Because you're.
And even what clothes you should wear.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the bottom initially.
So, Rep Carter and Ivy, how can parents identify, look into this, or have better knowledge when it comes to internet and the risk of their child or loved ones being human trafficked? How can one expand their knowledge?
Well, it goes to the relationship that you have to have with your child nowadays.
I agree.
And parents have to be stronger in making their children understand that my job is to protect you not only from the world, but from yourself as well. You know, our children think that we woke up one day and we're just old.
Right, right. We're
You
Facebook
know.
people, you know?
Right, you know. But, you know, they're dealing with things that we never had no idea existed because of technology.
Right.
And how it moves every few months. And it's hard to keep up. It really is. So that's why it's almost, you know, getting trafficked, being pulled into something is almost similar to what we saw with gang activity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, gangs know how to find young guys that just feel like they're alone. You want to be a part of something. You want to be a part of a family. I mean, it's no different with trafficking. They're looking for that wanting, that love, that trust, that relationship, and they don't know that they're being exploited.
Mm-hmm.
So as a parent, you know, we have to pay better attention. You know, I thank God that, you know, my youngest son is 24. But, you know, phone check. Some of these ladies need to check their kids' phones like they check guys' phones.
Absolutely. Hello.
Because at the end of the day, your children belong to you. And, you know, I can give you a great example, and I hope she's not listening, my niece. Her and her dad are at odds right now. And she doesn't see it his way, and so, you know, I'm the middle uncle because I can get along with her. I told her, I said, you need to understand as you get older, you'll come to love and respect everything your dad's doing for you because his job is to protect you. You ain't got to like him. But trust and believe that everything he does for you is for you, whether you know it or not. And parents got to be okay with their kids being mad at them.
Exactly. You know, and that's I think one of the issues is when we have parents that are trying to be their children's friends. That is not your role as a parent to be your child's friend. That's what they go to school for, to gather friends. That's why they play in the neighborhood, to generate friends. Your job is to be a provider, a protector, and a guardian of your child, and to give them that discipline, that insight that they need, so when they become adults, they have a foundation.
Yep. So you're the
and
authority.
a corrector.
Exactly.
Yep. So a parent is an authority, and the same token, we're talking about them having some meaningful relationship where there's open conversations about things. What a difficult task, especially nowadays, right? As the kids go through transient developmental stages, one of them is, you know, the wanting to be free and break away and kind of close the door and do my own thing versus engaging with you. And that
even though that's what we want for our children.
That's correct.
To obtain some autonomy
precisely
when they get adults, and even as teenagers, you want them to have some type of autonomy, but you still want to be able to protect your child. It's that balance that you have to create as a parent, so that your child can come to you if there's an issue with somebody that may want to traffic them. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching In Session on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Please like, share, follow, like, and subscribe. And we have a PSA too.
Yes. Also, as we battle COVID-19 pandemic, it's clear that misinformation can be just as deadly as the awful virus and spread just as quickly. Myths are spreading on the internet and social media, so it's important to know the facts to keep our community healthy. The vaccines offered through Wayne County Public Health are scientifically proven to be safe. It is important that each one of us get the vaccine scheduled as soon as possible. Also, you can visit waynecounty.com/COVID-19 to get the latest information.
Yes. So we are back on in session. We have State Representative Tyrone Carter and our expert Ivy Neal. We're talking about human trafficking and the internet and keeping our children safe.
I want to ask Ivy this question, right? We well over a year into this pandemic.
Okay.
Has this changed anything in your experience working with young people?
I'm going to say yes. But I do want to back up a little.
Okay.
Okay, so, you're talking about the responsibility of the parent, of the mother, right? Well, what about these teen moms? You have a child at 13, 14, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I kind of explained to someone the other day when she was asking me about trafficking and why do these young girls put themselves in that position. Well, first off, I want to say that's not how it happens. Because let's think about this hypothetically. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have a family and most of the family are educators. What are you more likely to become when you grow up? Right? If most people in your family are healthcare workers, you're more than likely to become a healthcare worker in some sense of the form, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a teenage mother that was probably trafficked herself, she has a child. She doesn't see anything wrong with her daughter being on the internet doing things twerking because she's probably twerking with her.
Right.
So how do we break this generational thing that's going on when you're talking about the parents? Exactly. When I grew up, my mother had me when she was 35. My grandmother was like that real grandma, went to the grocery store, did laundry, cooked dinner, but nowadays you see grandmothers and they're 30 years old.
Right. So
Ivy brings a great point. You can't teach what you don't know.
Right.
And to be it, you got to see it. So if you see people going to work every day, you see people doing certain things. So how do we break that psychological curse, which leads to a cycle of, abject poverty, if you will, and loss of opportunities?
Yeah.
So again, I think that, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think that it is more on us and probably the DHHS budget to look at what resources can we get. When we're always talking about recidivism, we talk about people going to prison. Okay, we put more money toward that, keeping them out, than we do in saying, okay, how can we be a social service to these young ladies to break that cycle, that grip, or that not knowing. And, you gave a great point a minute ago. How has this COVID, this isolation, accelerated that? That human interaction is something that a lot of people need. And so the internet, and we can say internet and it's easy, but everybody's got it on their cell phones.
Yep.
So, I mean, the accessibility as a parent, you have to wrestle with. How do you control that? That's got to be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that, especially, and we're noticing that children are getting younger and younger owning or having in their possession a cell phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're looking at these smart devices and we're allowing our children to use these devices with no form of supervision. They're usually just, how often have you been out at a restaurant?
You see 3-year-old putting in passwords, for God's sake.
Yes.
I didn't know that I knew
Yeah.
anything about numbers at 3 years old. But Rep. Carter, you said something very important there. Because
Yes.
I do truly believe either take human trafficking, either take our, the prison population being disparities there, health issues. I think it lands with something you said there. Helping that single mother of a child or two or three as a society, lending a meaningful helping hand there. I think that could have some meaningful, long-lasting difference. But I know that's a conversation for a different day, maybe in a different station.
Mm-hmm.
But while you go there in Lansing, Rep. Carter, please make sure you advocate for that very heavy.
Oh, we have to. And we have to be intentional on where we put resources and money. Absolutely. Especially if we see an issue, that Ivy has just talked about, generational. Then how do we break what we call that generational curse? To have someone say, you know what? Wow, when you know better, you do better. So we have to show them, and the biggest thing is, and it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, we have to stop looking down on people. We really have to. Like they're products of their circumstances. Sometimes they're victims of their circumstances, and we've got to do a better job of looking our nose up and saying, you know what, how can I help you, as opposed to me judging you.
Right. Now, Ivy, I have a question.
Okay.
What does a trafficker look like? Is this somebody that a person knows, or what does that person
It doesn't look like the person on New Jack City. Okay, and I'm going to put it to you like that. They don't come through with the fish in the heels and the platform and the cape. They don't look like that.
So no Superflies?
No. None of that. None of that. A trafficker can look like anything and anybody. Can look like me. Can look like you.
Mm-hmm. So it could be a classmate. It could even be a family member. Or okay.
Yeah, because like I said, usually the bottom is the one that goes and gets the girl and recruits her. Okay. And she gets them ready to be trafficked.
Okay. So
that is a great question. If I may piggyback, because years working in the sheriff's department, people would always say, well, what does a murderer look like? What does a burglar look like? What does a rapist look like? And there's no look to it. I mean, this could be your next door neighbor. It could be, a person in your family. There's no look that you look out for. What you look out for is relationships that look unnatural. A 12, 13-year-old has nothing in common with a 20-something-year-old unless they're a relative. And even sometimes you have to take a look at that. So we almost have to question everything. But that's okay, because we're in a protection business as parents.
Right. And, I would rather a parent question than to be on that other end and be like, oh, my God, how did I not see these signs? So I think we should be more about preventative measures than being reactive once it's already happened.
Yeah, Rep. Carter, I want to ask you another question that I was taking a look at your bio earlier, and I saw that you've done a lot of work with taking folks the first walk in college, so to speak. What's your intention there? What's that all about?
It's all about the exposure. And for the last 10 years, pre-COVID, I would gather a group of young people, and this is what I look for. The person that's a 3.5 or 4.0, 3, they're going to do well. It doesn't matter where they go. I'm looking for the student that was like me, smart but just academically lazy, to try to figure out, to show them that, you know what, you can go to college. So we take them on what I call an HBCU, Historically Black College and University tour. And we have literally gone all over the country, as far as Texas Southern, Grambling, Jackson State, Florida A&M University. My oldest son went to North Carolina A&T after going on a college tour. And it's about exposure, to go and see, people that you may be comfortable with, or just to get away and grow up. But a lot of people that go to high school don't have a counselor. They don't have somebody telling them that, have you thought about this? I was fortunate enough to come up at a time when we had a counselor.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't worth, depending on where you went to school, but a guidance counselor, somebody to say, hey, here's some options for you. And, the blessing has been, and I've got a success story, a young man, Damon, didn't know this when I worked up at my old high school. He was 12 or 13 and his dad passed away. But I was fortunate to work up at my old alma mater, Southwestern. And my job was to lower the suspension rate because I probably went to school with some of these kids' parents and grandparents, like Ivy said, depending on, what happened. And Damon was 12 or 13. His dad died. So I met him when he was a freshman. They closed Southwestern. I lost contact with him. I found him in his senior year and took him on a college tour with me. He wrote me a letter that if I read it to you, it'd bring you to tears. He had no thoughts of going to college. He didn't know what he was going to. Damon graduated from Madonna University and is working at Amazon to this day. So I've changed his life's trajectory, his children, just by showing him that you could do this. So the goal is to expose as many young people to options and opportunities as possible. Everybody's not going to go to college. So with the summer program, we bring in, I just had some work done to my house by a bricklayer. Bricklayers can make as much money as they want right now. A carpenter, all that stuff we had in school that they don't have anymore. So God blessed me to retire at the age of 45, 13 years ago. My job now is to make sure that I give back.
Well, we appreciate you giving back, and you have given so much. Ivy, let me ask you, what are some of the red flags that we need to be looking for in children that may be in trafficking situations right now?
Because, of course, like, it doesn't happen immediately. You don't see it. They're not... It's not like the movie where they're kidnapped and thrown in the basement, although sometimes that does occur. But that's not always the case.
So we know that it starts with that grooming process. Grooming period. It could be that they met them on the internet and posed as friends, and even some people lie about their age and gender to befriend younger people. So I want you all to really be aware of that the person that you are speaking to on the other line may not be the person that you think you're talking to. So you may be getting catfished into thinking that you're talking to maybe a 14-year-old boy and you're really talking to a 65-year-old man with warts. I don't know. So you be very careful when you're friending these people. Go on their page. See what interaction that they're doing. Do they even have a picture of themselves up? Because oftentimes they don't even have a picture of themselves up.
Or they don't have a picture that's valid or
there's
accurate.
a real picture,
Exactly.
but like some of the red flags are they just start acting different. Like your swag is a little different.
Okay.
You start feeling yourself a little bit.
Okay.
Whereas one day you're just this depressed kid, low self-esteem, and then all of a sudden you begin to kind of blossom. You're feeling yourself. You think that you the ish.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So you get into this different type of swag because someone has started to feed your ego and make you believe that the world revolves around you and they love you. You're the prettiest person in the world, and now at this point no one can tell you anything because you have this other person in your ear telling you everything that you want to hear, and then eventually this person can get you to run away, stay out a little later, sneak out the house,
or
skip
maybe even
school.
skip school. So you need to look at those type
stuff
of
like
behaviors,
that.
Even changes in their wardrobe,
hair, start wearing makeup,
so, or even expensive clothes. That or even having money and they don't have a job. So these are some of the things that parents can look out for. And I don't know if traffickers are doing this anymore, but there was a time where they used to brand their quote unquote property. So I don't really see that as much as I used to. So I'm noticing there's some changes going on in that human trafficking world where they're not providing those type of identity or those type of clues anymore.
Like Rep Carter said, they're staying a step ahead, right?
Exactly.
By the time the
Yeah.
Rep Carter said one step. They're literally
that's one
10
step for the
steps.
sheriffs,
10
right?
steps.
But for
10
us, it's
steps.
20 steps.
Yeah, but
Right.
they're still branding.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
Well,
still branding.
criminals and people like that, they're not dumb. And this is how I'll say this. As a former officer, it troubles me when the police get on and tell you how they solved the crime. Because what you've done is educated people that are doing it or considering it to change their MO,
Exactly.
how they operate.
Exactly.
So, you know, that always has disturbed me for a while. Well, yeah, we ping these cell phone towers, so now what do criminals do? We just cut the phone off.
Right.
You know, we educate criminals into how to be better criminals. When we should just tell the public we put some good police work together and we found these kids that were being exploited.
I fully agree with you. I thought always there was just bad practice to
Exactly.
tell people know how they broke into a case, right?
Right.
Yes.
Public doesn't need to know how police did their work. I just care
Yeah.
that they actually did the work.
Right. You don't need to know details.
Correct. Otherwise, you go to school
Exactly.
in Virginia where Rep Carter went and learn all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the problem we have with the internet, with information, with 24-hour news cycles.
Yep.
Everybody believes that you have the right to know how we did it. And some departments are so quick to tell how they did it. And I'm sitting back scratching my head and said, all you did was just educate the next guy to not do it that way.
Exactly.
You know, the next person that's thinking about trafficking is going to say, well, oh, so this is how they caught the last guy. Let me figure out a new way.
Exactly.
You know, Rep Carter, I wonder if you have any thoughts here, or Ivy. Why does Michigan have such high human trafficking relative to other states?
Well, I wouldn't know if it's higher, but we have one thing we have here is a large concentration of undocumented, residents, and they're being exploited by, people that they trusted or know. The other thing is it makes money.
Absolutely. It's a multi-billion
it's a money-making business.
It's a multi-billion.
I mean, we've got 24-hour casinos. So, I mean, there's an entertainment hub. So, I mean, you look around and you see all of the, what do we call them? The gentlemen's clubs, So that tells you there's money in it. You wouldn't see a lot. It's almost like with the cannabis places now. You go to certain cities, they've got a bunch of them. It's supply and demand.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It's really about supply and demand. Human trafficking would not exist if there was not a market for it.
Sure.
So we know that there are people that have fetishes for younger children, and they're selling these children for sex. It could be for labor, whatever it may be. But there is a market for it, and the market is not created by the poor.
Correct. And there was a show, I don't know if it was 2020, one of these late night shows or something, that Michigan was involved, but out of Chicago. And these were high professionals who were actually paying for these people to go in their places, hotels, what have you. So you're correct. Somebody's paying for that. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist as a
Exactly. And we think that most people who are trafficked, because we have this stereotype that poor black children are being kidnapped. Yes, poor black children are being going into human trafficking, but it doesn't have to do with a person's socioeconomic state. It doesn't have to do anything with a person's race, their gender. It has about to do with who wants that person, because we know that even older adults in their 60s are being trafficked as well. So it has nothing to do with age, sex, gender. or social economic status, because we know that we have children that are from affluent families that have come up missing as well. And 9 times out of 10, it's to human trafficking in some form. So we have to even just educate ourselves as a society on
Talk,
human trafficking.
Talking about that, Dr. D, and Ivy and Rep Carter, what can parents do if they do suspect that something odd or of that nature is going on? What can one do given the world we live in today?
Well, I think the first thing is, and I'll let Ivy take us home. First thing is you have to determine the relationship that you have with your child. And can you ask those hard questions? And it doesn't just happen overnight. Because, again, your job as a parent is to protect. If you've got to put them on some type of punishment timeout till you figure out what's going on, you got to do it.
Right.
Because ultimately, if you don't do it, the consequences could be dire. I mean, they could be where they can't rebound from. So, again, it all depends on the relationship that you have and the relationship that you want to have. You want your children to be independent, but you also have an obligation to protect them from themselves. And if you see something, do something about it. And if you notice those changes, start asking questions.
Absolutely.
You got to know. If they want to go places, they're going to lie to you. But at least you're having that conversation. And every now and then you have to inspect what you expect.
Right. And then there's a tracker now that you can even put on your child's phone. And I know certain phone companies have it where they have a locator where you can, it's just a app or whatever it is, or you call them and tell them to turn it on. So there's ways that parents can protect their children, even if they don't know if their children lie, because children will. They think they're slick. I was a child at one point in time.
I was going to say, I've lied a time or two.
Yeah, so I mean, it's natural, it's normal. Because we think teenagers, kids think that they're doing something, but it's all been done before.
Ivy,
Right.
firsthand working with folks, what can parents do?
Well, first of all, be 100% educated and aware. Is the main thing, and be able to have resources available. Cause right now I'm actually pushing an initiative that involves the churches to get involved, and my hopes and my vision is once it's opened up to the churches, then you have more people aware.
Yep.
So if anything happens within the family, then that family member can initially go to their pastor, their faith leader, and say, this is what's going on. And you have your church community to actually assist with the community in combating this issue, with providing resources inside the church so pastors can know what to do and where to go in the event.
Right. Rep Carter, I want you to wrap things up really quick for us and tell us how someone who is a survivor of human trafficking can gain trust with the police, because right now we know that some of these survivors are afraid to tell because they've been told that the police is not their friend. How can we change that narrative and have survivors trust the police and to know that they'll be safe?
Well, I know that there's a pilot program in some of the precincts. I know that my precinct, the 4th precinct, they have a domestic violence advocate there. Check around, because now I think policing has changed. After George Floyd, it needed to change. That I think they're employing more social workers to sit down and have those conversations and get that trust that people will feel comfortable and not judged to come in and have those conversations and understand that, we're victims. And I think that relationship, we can expand on that.
Absolutely.
And hopefully in the expansion, and the more people, like Ivy and others that come and tell their stories, I think it's powerful to young people that may be on the cusp of getting exploited or may not know that this is what it's going to lead to. This conversation, innocent in the beginning, these are outcomes.
Right.
So I
Well,
think as we move forward, that is a great point, and that's something that we can work on with the police department and regain or rebuild that trust.
right. I want to thank both you and Ivy for joining us today. This has been a very exciting show for me, real resourceful. So thank you again for both of you joining us and sharing with our audience a little bit about human trafficking and the internet. Join us next Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. for your daily week or for your week of in session. I'm Dr. T.
Dr. Fista, Ivy, thank you. Rep Carter, thank you very much.
Have a great
Thank you all
day.
for
Thank
having
you
us.
for having us.
Anytime. Right, Ivy?
Right, and thank you so much, Rep Carter, for all your support.